Well, sweaters that
Frankie, David, Charlie.
yeah.
Message to him, to Ben, so he can touch base with the rabbi. Yes.
I think they were just starting to do it.
Sister Harris.
Right.
Is he in the United States now? He'll be
Eight months.
Oh, he watched.
can't do this. Not very.
She's a Ford. Isaac was
Then we need to look at.
If we can, then yeah. Fine. Do I have one more?
John, is this your two bodies?
Yeah, this is his guy.
I thought so.
Actually, he would tell you that it's a multi-branch menorah.
That's what I said.
May or may not have been a little bit of a smallness.
Did it? Oh, right. We'll leave you to that one. Cool. You want to go to Don't you call me.
Talking in the morning.
I don't know if this is on or not. I know that we're going to be recording at some point. Is it on there too? Loved ones just brought Fred to our graveside. Next to is beloved Doris. We pause now and share some prayers. Some of them are traditional, some are read, and some are sung. And I think most of you have the service handout so that you will be able to participate as well. And the idea is that there are, again, many people who are going to be online, who will be watching the recording. And they want to be here as well, but it wasn't always possible. But they are here in spirit. And so that they can hear your voices is so very, very important. We have this lovely photograph of Fred, one that captures his smile. And I hope as we go through these prayers, that that's exactly how we will think of Fred, with that smile, with him and his brilliance spinning for another pun, another quip, another way to bring a smile on your face as well. Bruchim haba'im b'shem Adonai. Blessed are each and every one of you who've taken time today to gather here at Golden Hill so that we can make sure that Fred has been laid to rest with dignity and love and the respect, with you being his companions along this journey. And so I ask if you'll turn to page 2. Ruthie, come over if you will. The prayer Shiviti Adonai Leneti that reminds us that God is by our side.
Shiviti Adonai lenekti tamid kimimini bal emot lachin samach libi vayageh kevodi af bisari shkon laveta Kilo tazov nafshi lishol lo titin hasid chalirot shechat todieni orachai Sova semahot et panecho ni'imot bimim haniktzah. Shiviti Adonai lenekti tamid Mini
We read responsibly. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember him. In the opening of buds and the rebirth of spring, we remember him. The rustling of leaves and the beauty of autumn, we remember him. When we're weary and in need of strength, we'll remember him. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember him. 23rd Psalm is next, and Ruthie's going to sing this passage. Again, I keep reflecting back to when Doris was going through her last moments with such dignity. She still ruled the roost from her bed, right? And how uneasy it was for Fred. Again, looking, this couldn't be the place. This couldn't be the place for the burial, right? We go through looking for that place, that journey, where we're to go. And this 23rd Psalm says, yes, part of that is walking through the valley of the shadow of death. And yet I'm not going to live in fear and with total anxiety, just a little. I can have a little. And I don't have to embrace my end. But I'm also going to realize that what I've done in my life, Fred certainly had this, and most certainly Doris as well, the creation of wonderful family and wonderful friends, a chavara of friends, building a community. They realize that those are the voices, that's the love that continues on. So the 23rd Psalm, let us sing it and then we'll read it.
Adonai roi lo exar in ode she'ar b'tzeni. Amen. Minuot yunachalini. Nafshi yushuvein yancheni u'maglet tzedek l'man shemo. Kam ki ele begitz amavet v'irarak yatayim adi. Shivtecha u'mishantecha hemayana hamuni ta'aroch levanai shulchan neged zorai dishanta b'shem ben roshi hozim vaya ach tov chesed yitifuni kol yamei hayai shabti beveit Adonai Lord Yami.
Let us read together in English. It's at the bottom of page 2. A Psalm of David. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. God enables me to lie down in green pastures and leads me beside still waters. God restores my soul and guides me in paths of righteousness for the sake of the divine. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You've set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You've anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever. Kohelet, chapter 3, it says, we say, a season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for being born and a time for dying, a time for planting and a time for uprooting the planted, a time for slaying and a time for healing, a time for tearing down and a time for building up, a time for weeping, a time for laughing, a time for grieving and a time for dancing, a time for throwing stones and a time for gathering stones, a time for embracing and a time for refraining from embraces, a time for seeking, a time for losing, a time for keeping, a time for letting go, a time for tearing, like that Kriya we just tore before the service, a time for sowing, a time for silence, a time for speaking. I wanted to share a few words and then I'll call up a whole bunch of others. As you guys know, we're currently in the time of counting. We've been counting from the day after the first Seder of Pesach, as the Torah says, Mimocharat Shabbat. And we're instructed to count for 7 weeks of days. And on the 50th day, to have the festival of weeks, or Shavuot. Today is the 23rd day of that counting. And I mention this because there is a transition from Pesach, Zman Cherutenu, the time of our freedom, to Shavuot, the festival of weeks, which is known as Zman Matan Toratenu, the time of the gift of Torah. It's a metaphor for the sacred journey of life. It's not enough. Lo dayenu. It's not enough for us merely to be free. Rather, it's essential that we also have a sense of purpose in life, a sense of wonder and discovery of Torah and wisdom. That is our ideal, and that is what exemplified our beloved Fred Schwartzberg. His life was one of learning and teaching, discovery and inspiration, and it was fittingly filled with intense study, a tireless sense of humor, an endless delight in surprise and puns, and above all, with a boundless love of his family, friends, and community. By the way, this is one that John shared with me last night, one of Fred's favorites. What's 2/3 of a pun?
What? PU.
PU. That was Fred. He loved that stuff. Fred was born and raised in the Bronx. No cheers. The youngest son of Nathan and Augusta, and his brother Hal was 8 years older. And though there was genuine fondness, the difference in ages kept them from getting very close. Still, Fred was proud of coming from the Bronx, and certainly have graduated from PS 42 and the prestigious Bronx High School for Math and Science. And Fred then earned his Bachelor of Science in Metallurgy at the School of Mines here in Colorado, the almost football champions. Twice. Later, he earned his master's degree from the Ohio State. And of all of his accomplishments, and they were great, Fred's greatest came with his lifetime of love and adventure with Doris. Now, I know, John, you're going to talk about all the scientific stuff about what he did with NASA and all this stuff, which is great. And I have no clue what any of that means. So you're going to share that stuff. But finding Doris, I know what that meant to them because they shared it. In 1952, Doris Arndt, was a senior in high school, and she was going out with a boy from the School of Mines. The boy apparently was quite smitten with her and was going to pop the question, but he didn't have a car. But his smart and handsome friend and classmate from New York, Fred Schwartzberg, had a car and also a plan, apparently. So Fred drove Doris because Doris found him a date, and they went out as a double. The friends proposed. He proposed to your mom, but Doris laughed at him. Perhaps a bit intimidated himself, Fred took a few more months before working up the nerve to ask Doris out for his own date. He recalls that it was to a School of Mines football game. Eventually, they started to go out more and more often. And when Fred proposed in the spring of 1953 on a lovely bench right outside the boathouse at City Park, Doris didn't laugh. She said, yes. They married May 2nd, 1954 at the Astor Hotel in New York City, where Fred's family lived and honeymooned in the New York Alps, otherwise known as the Catskills, which Coloradans would say, that's just a mere hill, that's not a mountain. For New Yorkers, that's a mountain. Fred and Doris made their first home in West Hartford, Connecticut, as he took a job with Pratt & Whitney, and their love was blessed with the birth of Merle. Fred then was hired as a research institute in Columbus, Ohio, where he continued his studies and earned his master's at the Ohio State University. And even more significantly, that's where Beth was born. And then Martin Marietta in Denver hired Fred, so the family moved back here to Denver, and that's when John was born. Fred was with Martin Marietta from 1959 to 1983, and then he started his own engineering firm, the Rocky Mountain EM Tech. What a great source of pride it was when John, not only you started to work for your dad, but then you became president of the firm. I want to leave the rest of the professional stuff to you. But Fred and Doris, as all of you know, especially those long life friends, they were members of Temple Sinai from 1967, right? From almost the very, very beginning. And they were lifelong learners. No matter what the class, my weekly lunch and learn classes, where they would hold forth. And again, it was an hour class. I was given maybe 25, 30 minutes max to actually teach a lesson because everyone else was kibitzing, which is wonderful. It's a delight. Rabbi Zweren's wonderful Torah classes, which are still continuing. I think they're on one of the last chapters of Deuteronomy. But for most of that journey, both your parents were there. And of course, they were almost always at Sinai's fabulous lifelong Jewish learning classes. And of course, classes at Ali and educational events with the AJC, or with the Chavurah, you name it. Doris and Fred not only attended, they were also fully engaged, participating, sharing, and lifting the intellectual level of every session. Well, at least Doris did. Is it any wonder then that their kids and grandkids are also so engaged and active in their respective Jewish communities? After family, friends, and faith, the next loves for Doris and Fred were travel. They went several times to Israel, throughout Europe, especially they loved the European river cruises, the Caribbean, and the Orient. 3 years ago, Doris passed away. And a great part of Fred's spirit and energy never recovered. These last several months have been very difficult, yes, for Fred, but especially for the family. That man who loved to talk and to quip, he was not there anymore. But the love you gave to keep Fred at home, the home that he loved, and the effort that you made to make sure that he was so well cared for. Well, that's an inspiring model, a role model for all of us. I pray, John, Earl, Beth, all of you guys, I pray that you know how much it was evident in the whole community that what you gave him was pure love, It's earned our admiration. I pray also that you find some comfort realizing you left no stone unturned to make sure that he was taken care of. And I also pray that you choose to remember the good times, the teasing and the pranks, the endless stream of jokes and puns, the ever-present twinkle in his eyes as he looked at you that expressed that extreme fondness and love. With Fred's passing, there is a hole in our heart and in our community. May we remember him for blessings. Zichrono livracha. He will be remembered as a blessing. So, John, I know you have his dissertation right now. So why don't you share, Merle and Beth, and then we're going to have the grandkids and Patty also to share.
Over the past few years, I've learned a few lessons. Actually, I learned a lot of things, but a couple of things specifically. First of all, dementia sucks. It just sucks. It's a cruel, unkind, uncaring, relentless disease that steals from us our loved ones, and it steals themselves from them. Many of you know this, unfortunately, and my heart is with you. And if you see fit to do so, find some room in your giving to give some money to a credible Alzheimer's or dementia research fund, in hopes that we can get our revenge on this disease someday in the future. Secondly, although I've known this day is coming for years, might not have been the wisest move to wait until midnight last night to write this. I could rationalize this by saying that it would be disrespectful to write a eulogy for someone who hasn't passed, but we know that's hogwash. Our sages teach us that it is a sacred obligation for children to eulogize their parents. It comes from the 10 Commandments, Kibud Av Ve'em, honor your father and mother. And the rabbinic sages who extrapolated this obligation from that, I'm sure knew very well how agonizing and difficult it is to do, especially on a day like this. It's not hard to give my father honor. But on a day like this, it really is. So I will warn you that if blubbering idiocy makes you uncomfortable, these next few minutes are going to be awkward. So today I honor not just my father, but my teacher, my mentor, my business partner, my professional colleague, and my friend. From July 1st, 1992 until 2016, we worked day by day together at the engineering firm that he founded in 1983. We solved problems and we broke things and we put them back together sometimes and we broke more. And I learned engineering at his feet. You know, I learned stuff between the covers of textbooks over across the hill there at the School of Mines, but I really learned engineering from him. But he knew a sucker when he saw one. So about 7 years after I went to work for him, we traded titles. He always loved the engineering, the business part, not so much. So, you know, he said, "Oh, look, there's somebody that can do that." And he cherry picked the cool cases and the ones with good travel. He went to Paris and I went to Alliance, Nebraska. During his time in industry, especially at Martin Marietta, he was renowned for his expertise in some niche areas of materials engineering. He wrote numerous research reports and monographs for NASA and the Department of Defense, especially in the area of low temperature materials behavior, fracture, and testing. He authored technical manuals for NASA, and he was instrumental in developing test techniques for aerospace materials that are still used today. If you remember back to the 70s, Space Lab, the first orbiting space station, he led a team of engineers and technicians that tested the glass windows for impact resistance on Space Lab. He was a nerd's nerd, and he was incredibly well respected in the aerospace materials community. But you'd never really know it, though, because Dad was not a stand in the spotlight kind of guy. I recall once he was invited to speak at a technical conference in Moscow during the Cold War years. And the State Department advised him not to go. And he didn't. Something about his security clearance or some such nonsense. Some years later, I found the conference proceedings. And there was a note in there saying that he was noted by his absence. I brought it to his attention. He was mildly amused. But accolades like that didn't go to his head. He brushed it off and said, "Oh, that was just Russian propaganda." I do recall when I was in grad school at Mines, mentioned to him that the noted author of a textbook on fracture mechanics was coming to speak at Mines, and he said, "Well, that's great. Tell him I said hello." It turns out that he and this guy had done testing together, written papers, many of which were the basis of this textbook. I never knew, had no idea, and he'd never tell you that. But for all that seriousness at heart, Fred was a jokester and a prankster and a punster. He would take delight in regaling anyone who would listen with tales of growing up in New York across the street from the cemetery. At night, he and his friends would sneak down the fire escape, cross the street. They had this particular location where they could slither under the fence into the graveyard, and they would frolic among the headstones, keeping an ever vigilant eye open for the watchman in his spotlight. They never got caught. All of his childhood friends had animal names. I don't know what that means, but he had Howard the ape, April. There was Mousy, and there was the lion, Leon somebody or another. I don't know what that means, but they were all animals. But he loved to tell us about that, especially in the last few years. For whatever reason, those stories came out. He had a great sense of humor. He wasn't shy about sharing it, as you know. He would, and he loved his own humor. He was his own biggest fan. He would crack himself up telling a joke, even before he could get it out of his mouth. His eyes would crinkle, his shoulders would heave, and he would break out in laughter, leaving his audience to wonder what could be that funny. His pranks with his merry band of troublemakers at the Martin Marietta Materials Test Lab were nothing short of legendary. In the late 60s or 70s, Fred was tasked with creating the first school bell for the Temple Sinai Religious School, because Temple Sinai shared space with First Plymouth Congregational Church. It had to be portable so it could be stowed away when not in use. So he put this thing together, and he and his cohorts at the test lab decided they were going to have some fun with it. They had an upcoming budget audit meeting. And so they rigged up this school bell to a micro switch in the mechanism of this conference room chair. So when the auditor came and sat down, every time he'd lean back, the bell would sound. He'd lean forward, it would stop. Lean back, it would sound. Lean forward, it would stop. On and on and on. And Fred and his pals they had to be biting the inside of their cheeks bloody to keep from cracking up. Finally, after this went on for a while, the auditor stops, leans back and forth, and says with a straight face, am I doing that? Conference room broke out in tears of laughter. The audit meeting was relatively short-lived, and they all clapped themselves on the back, congratulating themselves for an audit well spoiled. They were quite the youngsters. There was another time that he got another guy at the company to call the new departmental secretary, who was not maybe the most favorite person in his department. The guy called and said, "I'm from the phone company. We need to flush the water out of the lines. Would you please hold the receiver over the trash receptacle?" Which, much to their great delight, she did. But maybe my favorite Fred prank actually ties in with one of his best life lessons. So he took a metal ruler and he ran it through a rolling machine. A rolling machine is it's like a pasta maker. It thins the metal, but it elongates it at the same time. So he made this ruler that was about 25% longer than normal, long enough to be inaccurate, not quite so long that unless you really had a keen eye, you would notice it. And they would wait, either for a new person or somebody who was way too big for their britches to come along and hand him the ruler and send him off to make some sort of measurement that was needed in a calculation. And it would come back erroneous. But the life lesson that he always used with his ruler, which I still have on my desk at work, is, no matter what you do, no matter what you measure, no matter what you calculate, ask yourself, does it make sense? And that was Fred. While some of his pranks may have been aimed at other people, he was never afraid to poke fun at himself either. Take a look at the Feldman website. You'll find some pictures, including one, a professional headshot of him in a clown nose, glasses, a tie about the width of a banquet tablecloth, and you'll see what I mean. And there was the time that he donned a Burger King, a paper Burger King crown, and grabbed a wicker wrapped jug of wine, tucked it under his arm, danced around singing some song, and this he referred to as the Bogaziti. It came in numerous flavors and variations, but it always entailed some impromptu get up and silly and outrageous act. He was not above his own sense of humor. Dad was the ultimate handyman. He could fix anything from automobiles to electrical wiring to houses throughout his life. His personal sense of value was being king of his castle, taking care of his own home. Of course, once his dementia intensified, it made for some entertaining, harrowing, and downright terrifying adventures. But it was still the course of his nature, the very core of his essence, to fix things. So, Dad, if you can, please haunt me and let me know where you stashed all of the lamp parts, all of the TV components, and all of the bits and pieces for those household items that we haven't found yet. But for the pranks and jokes and raucousness, Fred was a kind man. He was compassionate, caring, modest, generous, and usually all too willing to look past other people's faults. He was curious about things and wanted to know how things worked. He used to ask applicants for jobs with us, do you have gears in your head? He wanted to know if people were curious and could envision the way things worked. He also wanted everybody to be able to do math in their heads. And so to this day, thanks entirely to him, like him. So, Dad, now is the time. Go find a perfectly good furnace, fix it, tear it apart, do whatever, have a ball. And don't worry about us. We're good.
a hard act to follow.
Well, it's a very hard act to follow. There's so much to share about your life, Dad, and your accomplishments. There's a joke in our family that I can't do anything without crying, so here it goes. He was a character. This is a little bit of a repetition since we didn't collaborate to see what we all wrote. So I guess it's a continuity. He was a character. He loved jokes. He loved pranks. This sounds very familiar. And adventures, and he loved the way things worked. He was compassionate and always found the good in life. He taught by example. And he was always able to find the good things in life, and my source to the silver linings approach to life that many people find so annoying. But thank you, Dad. He loved sunny days, and I'm sure he's ecstatic that he got a sunny day today. Maybe some clouds in the sky. He would always tell us during these last 3 years, it's a pleasure to live in Colorado. He'd ask me, where do you live now? I'd say New Jersey. He'd say, New Jersey? You moved to New Jersey? I'm like, yeah, I know it's crazy, but there's some grandkids here that are pretty cute. And I guess, John, you didn't mention this part, but he loved adventure. And when he was 18, he took the train by himself to get here to Colorado to go to the School of Mines. I asked him how scary that was. He goes, oh yeah, it was really scary, and he was really lonely, and he really missed his parents very much. But he loved it so much here, he came back. And we'll skip this part because you already told about crawling around in the cemetery. Because, it goes full circle, Dad. And he would go traveling, and he just picked places. He traveled all over Colorado. He couldn't, he would talk about where he'd been and on the map, show me here, show me there in the later years. And yes, again, John, learning and teaching. He told me he never wanted to influence me and my career choices. He said he never wanted to be responsible for my misery as an engineering student. Oh. But he was so proud when I graduated. He obviously loved humor. One time I was very sick and in the hospital, and he came into my hospital room, a little green puppet, and he sang, "It isn't easy to be green," and then did a little dance to go with it, because I'm sure he was scared to death. But he wanted to make sure that I was comfortable and safe. And of course, he also loved Cookie Monster. He always did a Cookie Monster routine. All right. And during these last years, when we would talk about if he'd ever been to New Jersey, and we'd say yes, he came for Frankie's wedding. And that was a 40-minute conversation about how much he loved that wedding, and it was so amazing, and he remembered things in the later years by the shapes of buildings and orientations. And so he would remember there was a curved stairway on that building, and you go into that room and it was diagonal, and he just said that was the most amazing wedding he had ever been to. He just really, really loved it. He also spent the last 3 years, I would say, organizing things.
No.
I'm busy. I got to get back to organizing things. It's like, Dad, how much can you organize? There's nothing left to organize. But, we go through the house and yeah, it's organized. Lamp harp is over here in this drawer, and the harp for another one we found over in that drawer. And I've been looking all over for this little doodad. So, but we never could find stuff during the process. Anyway, he taught us many things, especially a love for life and people, and how to get organized. Miss you, Dad.
Really? How do you want to go first, and then the grandkids, or the grandkids and then Pat?
Yeah, half of them are there.
Oh, I'm sorry. You want that? Oh, good.
Oh. Well, I think she meant better than usual. I mean, she gets to work. Oh my God.
I'm super good. My dad's goal was to live to 80. He exceeded his goal by a long shot and was elated. Although we will never know for sure, we believe his fierce loyalty for love, his fierce loyalty, his love for life and his kids made his final letting go a monumental task. While the last several years were challenging for him, every day we spoke, he would say he was happy. Dad cherished life. He always saw the bright side of everything and had an amazingly remarkable ability to turn his cheek and keep a smile in his heart. His great sense of humor must have been his guiding internal tickle. His generosity was extraordinary, moving his parents from New York City to Denver, setting them up and looking after them, all while having a young family and a full-time job. My dad spoke often about his happy childhood and the big climbing rock in the park nearby. He loved his day and night adventures with his buddies. He dearly loved his parents and greatly appreciated their trust to allow him to go exploring. Frequently, he told us that the best and his most life-changing event was his train ride to the Colorado School of Mines. It was huge to pick up and go clear across the country alone, and his drive and determination were his guide. It is a privilege to live in Colorado, Dad always said. He loved Colorado. Dad was incredibly humble. His brilliance, his many accomplishments and successes were always non-existent in his conversations. Rather, he wanted to know what you were doing and remind you that doing the best possible job with the highest integrity was what mattered. Loving came easily. His warmth, caring, and generosity for others was his core. He always put others before himself. He never failed to tell me he loved me, and every part of me has felt his love. For this, I am eternally grateful. He will be missed. He will always be with me.
Thank you all so much for being here. It means a lot to all of us. It must be true because we're all saying the same things and we did not coordinate. So it just shows you the strength and depth of his character. So here we go again. Fred was one of the kindest and funniest people I've ever known. He loved to make people laugh, and he loved to laugh himself. Things I remember about him, driving trips in the mountains. He and Doris would just get in the car on any given day, and they would drive nowhere, just anywhere, just to get in the mountains on a day like this and drive around and look at flowers and mountains and geology and stop someplace wonderful to eat. And so after a while, we got in the habit, us and our John and I and Becca and Jacob and the 6 of us would pile into the Suburban and drive all over the place for no reason whatsoever except being together and going to the Moffat Tunnel and hoping we would see a train. And it was wonderful. Shabbat and high holiday services, family meals. At services with Fred and Doris, it was the sweetest thing. They always held hands. It was so sweet. And then the next minute you would see Doris elbowing Fred to wake up during the sermon. Sorry, Rabbi. But it's true.
He stayed away from.
He stayed away from it. Must have been a different rabbi.
Never without it.
Absolutely. And we miss them. We miss them at services. And holiday meals was always, as you can imagine, a bunch of laughter and love with his family, who he loved so much. Thanks for being the best father-in-law, grandpa, dad, and friend to all of us. I love you very much, and I'll miss you.
Fred and Doris were blessed with 5 amazing grandchildren, and of course I had the honor of knowing Becca and Jacob, but there's also Charles and Frank and Alyssa. And if you guys would like to come up and share just a few words too.
So this is either going to be a big mistake or it's going to work out great. I didn't prepare anything. I do have a letter that he wrote me that I'll say when I can't say anything else on cue. But I guess I'll start off with this picture. This is a great picture of how I remember my grandfather. Pretty old in this picture. White hair, full head. He's got that smile. I was looking through a bunch of pictures yesterday, and he looked surprisingly similar when he was younger before I knew him. But he was a really big influence on my life and my upbringing. And of course, my family who brought me up as well. I'm also an engineer. So Uncle John, I would like to have a nice conversation with you about pranks to do in the workplace so I can evaluate whether or not they'd be appropriate. Because I just had an audit and I don't think that one would work very well.
How you deliver it.
Growing up, Grandma and Grandpa would always come to San Diego twice a year for my birthday and for Frankie's birthday. And there were a few themes. One, as my brother reminded me yesterday, going to the continental breakfast or whatever breakfast at the hotel. Now I go in my pajamas or whatever, but they would get us all dressed up to go for the breakfast. And then for a period of time, they were at this hotel, the DoubleTree. After breakfast, very excited to go and feed the ducks stale bread. And these are some of the things that I remember. He instilled a love for all things created and designed, whether it was man-made or not. Analytical, critical thinking. He introduced me to rock collecting, as I called it when I was younger, but geology. I literally cannot not think about him when I pick up a rock anywhere. Tons of rocks. I don't know if you would have called them rocks, but I have a bit of a collection that I curated during my childhood. And that was, he had a fascination with the design and creation of everything. And he really influenced me a lot in my career and my play, which I like to think is one and the same. I had a couple of other things I wanted to say, but I can't quite remember them. So last year, I drove out to Colorado. My mom was coming in and I'd gotten a reliable car. So I drove out here. I got the opportunity to, with my mom, drive him up to Lookout Mountain. Apparently, he had been there many, many times throughout his life. He used to go up there with grandma. And it's a very, very meaningful place for him. And even though he was getting into his stages of dementia, he was moving a little too fast. But he was excited to be there. He was standing up on top of the mountain, pointing down at Golden, still able to recognize all of these areas. And I could tell it was really, really important to him and meaningful that he got to go up there and see it. And I'm really glad that I was able to do that. When my grandmother was on her deathbed, I'd also come out several times actually, and also in his stages of dementia, but somehow with his, let me just backtrack a little. Another thing about my childhood with grandma and grandpa were games. I would say that it was Chinese checkers, Yahtzee, gin rummy, and whatever the other, Scrabble, I guess. But gin rummy was the one. And that involved critical analytical thinking and shit talking. Which was one of the more enjoyable parts of that game. Did not care if I won or lost. But growing up, I would always trade off, or grandma and grandpa would always trade off who played gin rummy with me. And when grandma was in hospice, we played gin rummy outside. And he actually was able to play really well. And my brother recorded me and my grandfather bantering about the cards. But he just really instilled a love for life and the world as we see it and think about it in myself, and I'm sure all of us here. finish off with when I graduated. When I graduated from engineering school, I am not a metallurgical engineer. I like to build things, kind of like Legos, except I get paid for it for some reason. And as a mechanical engineer, there's a handbook called the Machinery's Handbook, which surprisingly is actually more helpful than Google a lot of the times because you know exactly where to find it. You don't have to fish through a bunch of stuff. But I have this book at work, and I asked one of my coworkers to take a picture of the letter that he wrote inside. And to be honest, if I didn't have this letter, this was my excuse to talk today. My backup. So here goes. Oh, just so you know, this is a reference handbook for all things related to engineering, fracture mechanics, materials, manufacturing methods. You can Google it. Dear Charles, it is with great pleasure that I give you this magnificent reference book. Machinery's Handbook is a resource that every mechanical engineer treasures in his library. I use my 26th edition regularly. As you thumb through the book, you will see and be amazed at all the information packed into 2,700 pages. I think you will find that isn't it. You will find it important as a practicing engineer. With your high level of creativity, I truly think it will be an asset to you. Use it well as you progress into your future life as an engineer. With all my love, Grip. Enjoy the rocks. Miss you.
Rabbi Solomon Grunwald is here, and he's going to share with us Asainai, the mountains that are so dear to him.
I feel so blessed to be here today, and on behalf of Rabbi Shulman, myself, and the Hebrew Educational Alliance, we want to extend our condolences to all of you. I felt like I learned so much about your father, and I don't know all of you, but I know John. And now I know that John learned who he is, and I'm sure all of you from your father, his values, his priorities. And I learned that humor and kindness and that sweetness of heart and generosity of spirit. I see it in you, John, and I can only imagine he taught that to your whole family. And I imagine that like you are a shul person. You support your shuls. You're there for other people. And you're part of our morning minyan and part of our community. And you're there because you know what it's like to be a mourner, and you are there for other mourners, just as they are there for you. So I know that on behalf of Rabbi Rines and the Sinai community and myself, I just want to say that we continue to be here for you in the days and weeks ahead as you walk the path ahead of grief and mourning, to say Kaddish with us, to reach out to us, to get a meal delivered from us. My condolences to you all. The psalmist says, Esa enai el hehari me'ain yavo ezri. I lift my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from Maker of heaven and earth. God will not let you stumble. In a moment, we're going to be lowering the casket, and I'm going to sing Esa enai, a melody that's very familiar, and I invite you to join me if you'd like. And I think that we say Esa Enai at a funeral at this point, traditionally, because at this moment, our eyes are naturally drawn down to this very unnatural experience. It's, well, natural, but so bizarre to put a person in the ground. And our eyes will lower, of course. But the psalmist reminds us that to lift our eyes to the beautiful mountains we can see here every day, to look at the horizon, because your father, your grandfather, he's not gone. He lives on with you in his values, in his memories. And he blesses you on this beautiful sunny day to walk forward with your eyes to the horizon.
Will you please rise?
Esaena el heharu me'ain yamasi. Esaena el heharu me'ain yamasi. Ezri me'anai ose shamayim va'aretz. Ezri me'im Hashem ose shamayim va'aretz.
As the casket is being lowered, we'll shortly put earth on to have the fulfillment of our mitzvah of Kavura, to make sure that his physical remains are protected. Feldman has brought us earth from Jerusalem to Mount Olives. So we'll put that on first, and then earth from Colorado. At some point, you want to bring some earth from the Bronx and the New Jersey. That's okay too. So come. We pause 7 times. So our hesitancy to say goodbye to Fred, and yet we continue that same process of moving forward, and with the earth that we place, earth with the back of the shovel, and then with the face up, making sure that we won't leave this spot until we have protected his physical lands, just as we will the neshama that is bound up in the bond of life with us. There are shovels on either side. And when you are finished, don't hand the shovel to the next person. Rather, place it back into the pile so each person can fulfill this by themselves. All please go in.
All of us are welcome to participate in the mitzvah.
natan Adonai lekaki hisham Adonai mevorach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher yatza etchem betzamo. V'zan v'chacher etchem b'tuvo. V'mit etchem badin v'natah b'tochechem chayei olam. Baruch atah Adonai dayan ha'emet. We praise you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe. You have formed us in the divine image and nourished and sustained us in goodness. You have made us but mortal, and yet you have implanted immortal life within us. We praise you, O God, judge of truth. So make no flame berofech cholim atir asorim kayem emrotu l'shnei afar michamocha balgadolot midomelach melech memet umchayem etzmech Yeshua Baruch atah Adonai noteh v'tochenu chayei olam. Eternal is your might, O God, and all life is your gift. Great is your power to save. With love you sustain the living. With great compassion you give life to all. You send help to the falling and healing to the sick. You bring freedom to the captive. Keep faith with those who now sleep in the dust. We praise you, O God, who has implanted eternal life within us.
Oh.
Wait a minute. Is that the thing?
Is there anyone else who still wants to place a shovel? If not, then come back. We'll chant El Malay Lachamim in the Kaddish. El Malay Lachamim is on page 4. We make reference to Fred's Hebrew name, Ephraim ben Nahum the Golda. I have a couple extra copies of the service. Well,
Need one more?
if you're able, would you please rise? El Malay Rachamim Shochein B'Maromim Hamsemenucha Nechona Al Kanvei HaShchina B'Malot Kadoshim Tohorim Kazohar Rakia Mazirim Et Nishmat Ephraim Ben Nachum V'Golda Shalach Le'olamo B'Gan Eden תהיה מנוחתו, לכן ברחמים יסתירהו, לשאת כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרוע בצרוע החיים, את נשמתו, אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. We say together in English. O God, exalted and full of compassion, we pray that you will grant perfect peace and eternal comfort in your sheltering presence to the soul of Fred Schwartzberg. God of mercy, protect his soul forever. May his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Adonai, you are his portion. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. The Kaddish Yatom on page 5. And again, when we gather tonight at Fred and Doris's home, we will have the minyan at 6 o'clock, and that'll give the family an opportunity to say Kaddish. There'll be a mincha minyan on Friday afternoon. I think the service will be at 4:30. On Motzei Shabbat, it'll be at 8 o'clock. And then on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday at 6 o'clock. Consult the pages for visitation. At each time, it gives the family an opportunity to recite Kaddish, as we do now. Yit Gadol, the Yit Kadash, Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma Devarach Cherotei, Be'yamnich Malchutei, Be'chayechon, V'yomeachon, U'chayedecho Beit Israel, Ba'agala V'zman Karim, V'imru, Amen. Yeh Shemei Rabbah Mevarach Le'olam Ulamei Almaya. יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר, ויתרומם, ויתנשא, ויתהדר, ויתעלה, ויתהלל, שמי דקדושה ברכו, לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירם בעלמא, ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום רבה מן שמיא, וחיים עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומה, ויעשה שלום. Aleinu v'al Yisrael v'imru amen. Let us take the joy that Fred brought to our hearts and let that bring comfort to us. On the last page we say, for the ties of love that death cannot sever, for the companionship we shared along life's path, for those gifts of heart and mind which have now become a precious heritage. For all this and more, we are grateful. Now help us, O compassionate God, not to dwell on sorrow and pain. Help us instead to find within our hearts the courage to return to the tasks of life and its joys. Amen. To the family, if we can all gather in gesture of support, to say these traditional words of asking God's comfort. May God comfort you, along with all who mourn, in Zion and Jerusalem. Amen. Go forth with life, go forth with peace. Amen.
Yep, exactly. I like that. I love what you described about the human. You know, all right, I'll see you guys. Right, just so like friends. Okay, I'm waiting. Yeah. Yeah. No. Great. Yeah. A little bit of both. Yep. Hey there, Becca.
Oh, we love your mother.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, what a song. What an amazing celebration. I felt like
No, the
you all were so consistent. Right. There comes feel free to come by the house any of the days.
Yep. And then you and I are over here.
Yes. Yes. And we will do it.
That was beautiful. No, no, it doesn't. Exactly.
Best ever.
Yep. Like a good martini.
Oh, he was
All right, you guys are grandsons? Thank you for that part of this process. Thank you, children. And better heads all the way around. Yeah, that, all the way around. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there, I'll send you all these.
Yeah. Yep. All right, great.
It's pretty warm.
All right.
It's very.
When you're ready.
Okay.
Yeah. For me. Yep. Yep. Great to see you. See you soon. Yep. If there's anything I want to talk about. Okay. My uncle worked for Martin Mary. No, did he? Yeah. Okay. Then we're all Martins together. Okay. Yeah. Great sense. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
You do.
You're like, yeah, that's cute. Everything, every reference, everyone. I will take care of those keys.
Yeah.
I have no idea how long. I don't, and how long I didn't tell you.
This is what
We did all that.
You shared them. Oh, let's see it.
I've been.
Oh, sorry, I forgot.
Take a break.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Take a break.
Yeah.
Guys
And
come
then
in.
many other cemeteries. Starting to Camp Hill. Yeah. 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 Symbolic. Yeah. It has to do with subsidence.
Well, it's natural.
No, I understand.
Yeah. I mean, every once in a while they can come in and put more dirt on. And I've been thinking, so what do you?
I'm assuming you can't come in and visit yourself.
No.
Unless you do it by the time I grab it.
I don't know how you shit on your back. You know what? I will call Neil and ask him.
Yeah, I'll wave too.
Yeah.
The only reason why there's any green trees.
We should probably, yeah, we should probably.
At least one vehicle needs to be legal.
Right. Yeah, we should do that.
Yes.
Looks like the red miles.
Sorry. Yes,
Yes.
right. That's what Dad.
That's what we're doing. So we should go. Our marking does it already. Ah, nice to see you. Sorry. I know.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no family.
Yeah, you were probably not.
Thank you.
Okay. So, yeah, she runs.
Thank you.
Yes, I went to Israel. I know his kids. And, grandma made, yeah.
Jackets, brought you your shoes. Why did I bring a hat?
Let's go ask him.
That's what I'm talking about. That's like that's where you need to go. I'm gonna
Okay. Tom, I have your.
Okay, thank you.
Case. Yeah. So, style.